Hi guys, welcome back. So after you guys had practiced that worksheet and you should have received the answers from the sub, we're going to go over now how to subtract fractions, or we can do the same rule with integers in the keep, change. So I have a negative 2/3 minus a 1/2. I still have to find a common denominator. In this case, my common denominator would be 6. So I'm going to make both of these a 6. 3 times 2 gives me 6, so 2 times 2 gives me 4. I'm going to keep it negative, and I'm going to keep my subtraction sign. 2 times 3 is 6, so 1 times 3 is 3. We have to go back to the integer rule, and we have to keep change since it's subtraction. And we're working with negative numbers. So a negative plus a negative then becomes further into the negatives. Okay, so negative 4 plus negative 3 becomes negative 7. My denominator stays the same over 6. And then the same rules apply. 6 goes into 7 one time, but because my negative is bigger, it becomes a negative. And I'm left with 1/6, and that becomes my final answer. Don't let it catch you up simply because of the fact you have to keep change, and then you're adding. So most of the time we're still adding when we're dealing with negatives. Okay? One more example. Negative 3/4 minus 7/8. So my 3/4, if I take that to a common denominator, it's going to have an 8. 4 times 2 is 8. So 3 times 2 becomes 6. So my new fraction becomes negative 6/8. I'm subtracting, so I'm going to leave that the same. And this fraction doesn't have to change because it already has an 8 in the denominator. So negative 6/8 minus 7/8. I can do the same thing since I'm starting with a negative. I can keep change, and then I'm going to add my two negative numbers. So negative 6 plus a negative 7 becomes a negative 13, and my denominator stays as 8. I then have to turn that into a mixed number. So 8 goes into 13 one time. It's a negative because my sign takes over. And I have 5/8 left over, and that becomes my final answer. Okay? The only time you really have to go back to subtracting is when we get rid of the negative signs and you have two positive numbers. Besides that, we're going to keep our keep change rule and keep using our integers. Okay, you need to do these 3 problems either on your whiteboard or on an iPad. Pause the video, and then I will give you the answers. Okay, welcome back. For the first one, you should have gotten 3/8. This is one you would not have to keep change. You just do your simple subtraction. So 5/8 minus, this becomes an 8. 4 times 2 is 8, so 1 times 2 is 2. 5 minus 2 just becomes 3, and the 8s stay the same. This one is another one that you wouldn't have to keep change, and you should have gotten 5/12. So you should have had 3/4 becomes 9/12. 1/3 becomes 4/12. I'm going to subtract, and I'm left with 5/12, and that's already reduced. This one is a keep change, and your final answer becomes 9/10. In order to get that, though, I changed my 1/2 to 5/10 because 2 goes into 10 5 times. 1 times 5 is 5. I left my subtraction, and then I turned my negative 2/5 into negative 4/10. I multiplied each of them by 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. This is a keep change, but when I change this to addition and change this to its opposite, I end up with 5 plus 4. I don't have to subtract. So this is how that got me my 9/10, and it's already reduced, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay? If you have any questions, please make sure you write them in your notes so we can cover them when we get back. I would write at least G and I in my example, so that way you have one of each. one with a positive, and one with a negative. Okay, this real world example, we're then just going to be using word problems. So use the table to find the fraction of the total population that has A or B blood type. So I'm looking at both my A and my B. When it says or, that means I'm going to be adding. Okay, so 21 over 50 is my A, plus 1 over 10 is my B. I know 10 goes into 50, so I'm going to turn this common denominator into 50. So I'm going to change my 10 into 50. 10 times 5 is 50, so 1 times 5 is 5. My new fractions then become 21 over 50, which stayed the same, plus 5 over 50. When I add these together, 21 plus 5 is 26, and my 50 stays the same. Okay? I know that these are not reduced because they're both even, so I'm going to divide them both by 2. So divide 26 by 2, I get 13. Divide 50 by 2, and I get 25. This is now my reduced fraction. So 13 over 25 of the population is either type A or type B. So we're looking at both of these. And I had to make them my common denominators in order to add. Okay? One more example. In one town, 3/10 of the adopted dogs are German Shepherds, 7/25 are Golden Retrievers, 1/20 are Jack Russell Terriers, 3/25 are Poodles, and 2/5 are mixed breeds. Find the fraction of adopted dogs that are either Golden Retrievers or mixed breeds. So there's a lot of unneeded information that I don't need. So I'm only going to look at this number, my 7/25, because that's my Golden Retrievers, and my 2/5, because that's my mixed breeds. So I'm looking for either or. So 7/25 plus 2/5. Again, I have to make a common denominator. I know that 5 goes into 25, so my new denominator I'm going to use on this fraction is going to be 25. So if I take 5 to 25, I know that I'm multiplying by 5. 2 times 5 then becomes 10. So adding my new fractions, I'm going to have 7/25 plus 10/25. Okay, 7 plus 10 is 17. My denominator stays the same, and that is reduced. So 17/25 is either Golden Retrievers or mixed breeds. You're going to pause the video and do a worksheet. You'll then be given the answers. After you're finished with that worksheet and given the answers, you'll split into groups based on what you think you're needing, and then you'll be given your guided practice as well. Don't forget, since this is our second section, you'll have a test next time I see you, or a quiz that you'll be able to use your notes on, as well as you'll be able to use any of the reviews that you've done today. Don't forget that there will be vocabulary on that quiz, so make sure that you wrote down what the vocabulary was for least common denominator, and I will see you all either tomorrow or on Monday. Have a fabulous weekend.